Hi everybody, TJ Mack and Vintage Cards and Nostalgia here. Now there are certain things we can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell that can transport us to our past. When I walk by a pizzeria on a warm summer day and get a whiff of the aroma of the fresh dough baking in the oven, it reminds me of when I was a kid and had a newspaper route. Each week I would go house to house with a cardboard booklet that was held together by two large metal rings. Inside was a book of tickets on perforated sheets with a date and the address of each house. As subscribers paid, I would rip off a ticket and give it to them. While my weekly journey throughout the neighborhood would inevitably take me to Anthony's Pizzeria on the corner of 77th Street. The smell of that dough would put me in a trance and lead me into the restaurant, where I'd find myself spending a portion of my profits on a couple pieces of cheese and pepperoni pizza. Anthony's is long gone, but the memories remain. When I visit the old neighborhood I grew up in, I drive by the home of George Snyder, who used to live there many years ago. He was friends with my older brother, who would let me tag along whenever he played with him. And in between George's house and his garage, there was a good-sized rectangular opening, and in there was all kinds of wood and scrap metal, and we would set up our plastic army men in there and play for hours. The figures in the vehicles would be strewn throughout. We would hide them and pretend all the junk was debris scattered about the war zone, as the Americans in green would take on the Germans in gray. We would then take pebbles and throw them at the figures, seeing how many on each side we could knock down. Now we heard rumors that we never could validate that some of the rougher boys down the road would use firecrackers to blow theirs up. We were never that bold or foolish to try something like that. Now, I can't drive by that house and not think of those memories. For most of my childhood, sports cards served as the markers of my youth. I can drive by Impson's Pharmacy on Buffalo Avenue, where I distinctly remember opening packs of 1980 Topps hockey, or 7-Eleven on 70th Street, where I ripped open packs of 1987 Topps baseball. Cards have always been there. They were my entertainment on a rainy spring day when no one could play outside. I would hang out in my room with my cardboard friends as I would sort them into team order and stack them all up, getting lost in the moments. As I watch videos on YouTube and get to know some of the content creators, I learn about the cards that connect them to their childhood. For example, when I see cards from 1978 Topps baseball, I think of Drew from the channel, The Drew of Vintage Legacy, because I've heard him tell the story of his older brother who had an accident in 1978 and was hospitalized. The pastor of his church bought him some packs of 78 Topps. Drew remembers him and his brother looking at these cards over and over again. They would even play the game on the back of the cards that you can see right here. When I see these 1956 Topps football cards, I think of Chris from Stories in Cardboard. When he was a child, a friend of his bought some of his father's 1956 Topps football cards to school and gave them to him. Specifically, this Elroy Hirsch stands out because that is the card that piqued his collecting interest the most. It was this moment that contributed to Chris being a vintage card collector to this day. And when I see this card here, this 1973 Topps Bobby Bonds, who's appearing with Willie Stargell, makes me think of my friend Rick from the channel Rick Acosta Dodger Card Collector. He loved this card as a kid, even though he was a Dodgers fan. You never know what card will get a hold of you. Today, I am happy to say my 4-year search is over. I was finally able to add this 1981 Topps Danny White to my collection. This, along with my 1980 Topps Dave Parker and Reggie Jackson, are the 3 cards that take me back to the earliest days of my collecting. Sure, I ripped a few packs of 79 and 80 Topps football, but it was in 1981 as a 7-year-old that I really came of age as a football fan. Of course, I could buy this card anytime I want for about $1, but I wanted a graded example because that is how I collect. As I've said for many years, I'm a patient collector who finds joy in the anticipation of getting an item that I covet. The long wait makes it all the sweeter when the card arrives. Now, I first saw this card on eBay about 6 months ago, and the dealer wanted $24.99. Then he offered it for $20.50, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger. Right before Christmas, I received a $10 coupon from eBay, so I offered him $18 and he took it. So with the $10 off, I was able to get this card for $8 plus shipping. Not too bad. Now, I know this card will not excite many of you, but this video is not as much about the card as it is what it represents. You likely have a card that brings you pure joy the moment you see it, a card that captures a time and a place that is no longer here, but reminds you of the excitement that sports gave you when you grew up. When I see this 1981 Topps Danny White card, I'm taken back when he was just finishing up his first year as a starter, playing the position that is the most glamorous, important, and stressful in all of football, the quarterback of America's team. This card captures the Cowboys' new field general calling out the signals over a group of warriors all lined up, ready to do battle in the trenches. I see this card, and it reminds me of when my brother and I would go with my mom to McDonald's, and then after lunch, head over to this odds and ends store right next to it. Most of the stuff in there was not very memorable, but what I do remember is a box of 1981 Topps cello packs sitting on the shelf. Over the course of the football season, I would buy pack after pack, and the Danny White card is the one I wanted more than any. Eventually I landed it, and I was so excited to hold my hero in my hand. All was right in the world. So it is great to welcome this cardboard friend back into my collection. I haven't seen this card in person since the late 1980s, which adds to the joy of seeing it again. I even added this beautiful copy of the 1981 Sport magazine with Danny White on the cover. It shows him getting ready to fire a pass as Eagles defensive end Carl Hairston is bearing down on him. This piece is a perfect complement to my 1981 Topps card, and it'll look great displayed in my room. It also goes nicely with my 1980 Topps Reggie Jackson and the 1980 Sports Illustrated. Two of my earliest heroes side by side, where they will reside in my collection for many years to come. Now, no matter where the road of collecting takes you, I hope you take a moment to remember the roots of your collecting. The first cards you held that brought you happiness and started you on the path to where you are today. The novelist Thomas Wolfe wrote a book titled You Can Never Go Home Again. In it, he is saying that nostalgia causes us to view the past in an overly positive light and is not reflective of reality. Well, that may be true, but having cards in our collection that transport us to the past are a reminder that the hobby was once simple. It was about the thrill of finding a card of your favorite team or player, about cards and rubber bands and shoe boxes. While I have cards that are far more expensive and important to those watching this video, few will capture the joy that this card brings me. I would love to hear if you have a card in your collection that takes you back to being a child again. Feel free to share in the comments, and have a great weekend.